Interestingly enough, the phrenologists were the ones that did all the work on these, because to the phrenologists, this was a real problem. They've got an idea in their head that the shapes and bumps on a human skull dictates personality and intelligence, and then you've got a group of people that are over here modifying their skulls. This is a playground for that hypothesis, right? So all of a sudden, these skulls became worth big money. And when I say big money, I mean they were looted by the thousands. And when I say by the thousands, it's ridiculous, but nowhere is that better told than with this another image of Comcomly. You notice again, his head is not elongated there, although the artistic representations of him and his people were. Now, when he died from malaria, they believe, 3 years after he died, his skull was looted. And he was buried like most of the Chinook people were. They buried them in these raised canoes. They would put their bodies up off of the ground. They would put them on an island so that no big game could get to them, no big predators. And they would let them slowly rot and slowly decompose, and eventually there would be skeletons with grave goods left there. But Comcomly, he was the number one, like it was the holy grail of elongated skulls. This was a known, well-known Native American. When Lewis and Clark returned from their voyage, or from their trip, Comcomly was almost as popular as Sacagawea in the Western mind. He was a very well-known Native American for a time. And so his skull was looted, and sadly enough, you can see that they went and tattooed their name on the back of it, cataloged it, and put it on a shelf. And what's really sad about this is he was a huge friend to the white man, basically. When the first settlers came through, the first explorers came through, he traded with them, and he was well known for being shrewd but polite and understanding. When they built the fort near their Fort Astoria, he wanted to, many of his people wanted to attack it. And he famously said, look, man, these guys have really fine woven cloth. They have really powerful weapons. They have really good stuff. And they're not bringing their women and children. Do you really want to mess with these guys and see what happens when they bring their families? They're going to destroy us. And this was pretty salient observation 100 years ahead of its time. But he was a friend to him. And then 3 years later, it didn't really matter. They chopped his head off. And this was one example of many. This is one of the Memaloose Islands. Memaloose is the Chinook word for death or for burial. Excuse me, I need a drink. And there's a lot of those islands, like I said, where they would bury the people on them because they were considered sacred. Now, most of them were considered as having been touched by the gods of old, and they would choose certain islands. This is a great picture here that will show you just how bad it got. That is the grave of a white guy in the back, but here in the foreground is hundreds of bodies of natives that were dug up to be sold. The skull was really where the money comes from, and this was just all over the place. It was something they were proud of. And one of the areas that was most well known for this was a place called Coffin Rock, or Mount Coffin. And when Lewis and Clark saw the place, they said that there were over 3,000 of those canoe burials on there. And now keep in mind that the only people that were buried like that were free people. And again, if you were a free native on that side of the hills, your head was modified. That's 3,000 elongated skulls that were on top of this thing when they were first seen. And Mount Coffin, it's gone now. That's where it used to be. There's a Weyerhaeuser mill there. It's a logging area. It's long gone. They razed it. They actually destroyed it. But it used to be a very prominent and very well-known place, again with thousands of these burials on them. And this was a spot that was targeted, if you know who Lieutenant Charles Wilkes is. He did the expedition back in the 1838, and he went down into Hawaii. He went all over the world, as a matter of fact. Some people believe that he was the inspiration for Captain Ahab from Moby Dick. He was so well known as just being an asshole, basically, just a bad guy. But he did a lot of things that were weird. And one of the things that he did was when he was in Hawaii, he went up this mountain here, Paualahua mountain. I'm sure that I pronounced that perfect. But the natives had a way up this hill. They already had a planned trail that they'd been using for a very long time. And when he showed up there, he's like, no, we're not using that. I've got my own way up. And it turned into a nightmare. It got him in all kinds of trouble. It cost some of his men a few of their fingers and stuff because I guess it was cold in Hawaii that year on the mountain anyway. But the point is, he took it upon himself quite frequently to do things that were just a little avant-garde. And when he got to Mount Coffin a few months later, he showed up to the place and there were still thousands of those burials there, thousands of them. But when he left the place, his campfire accidentally set the place on fire and burnt every one of the burials, and the natives at the time weren't in a position to do anything because the plague, the malaria that had come through, had wiped out, our anthropologists estimate as many as 95%. Now, when he left there, there's no more mention of those skulls ever again. His father, to get a little conspiratorial, his father was a high-ranking member in the Skull and Bones Society and the British Parliament. He was a fairly well-known Freemason, and all the documentation after he leaves never shows any of the burials. And there was, again, this was a sacred area to the natives, and it ended up being very popular with the settlers, but it became a place that was basically almost symbolized the destruction of the culture that did these elongated skulls, the culture, the Cowlitz people, the Chinook-speaking people of the area. And now that's the picture I showed you earlier. You can see the little grave marker here. Now this is a really interesting image because for those of you who've watched my YouTube stuff, you know I'm kind of skeptical when it comes to things like ancient high technology or giants or anything. I want to get there. I'm not opposed to the idea, but you're going to have to take me there. We're not just going to jump there. But this is an interesting picture because, well, this guy's, he's holding an elongated skull, but down in the center of this photograph, there is this black skull. It's a little hard to make out here, but if I blow it up too much, it gets grainy. It's about 1.5 times size of the skull of all the other skulls in this image. And this isn't one of the images that you find that were doctored, that came from, you know, giants.com or whatever. This is in the University of Oregon's archives. And this is the only image that I've seen that hasn't been, with the pedigree of it doesn't come from people that want giants to be alive or been real. It's quite the opposite. So I find it interesting, but where is that skull now? It's gone. Like all the other skulls that were on this island, which they say were up to as many as 10,000 at one point, they're just disappeared over time. Now, this place obviously was looted heavily, very heavily. People were out, it was an outing. You just take your wife and kids out there and go grab some skulls, right? Have a good time. And the thing is these things disappeared, and this isn't the first time we've seen that. If you've seen my video on the Paracas skulls, we've seen a very, very similar issue with this, where there are hundreds of these grave bundles. The Paracas skulls came in these bags, these grave bundles, and guys would go in and record. Hey, I opened 68 of those bundles, and I recorded what I found in 4 of them, and I put the rest back on the shelf. And then some of them are missing skulls later, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what happened here. Rockefeller financed some of the Paracas skulls. Anyway, I've talked about that all in my video. I don't want to rehash that stuff too much, but the bottom line is it got to the point where it wasn't just some scientific inquiry and scientific interest that was funding this. It got to the point where it started to seem, not even seem, it became secret. It became a bit on the conspiratorial side.